Hi there, welcome to Yarnchix News, a very special episode because I have a lot of really lovely questions from my viewers here on YouTube. So it's 26 questions by 26 viewers. Thank you so much for taking part in the little Q&A vlog project that I started in podcast episode 59. I'm going to link here so you find me actually showing the little set of mini skeins that I will give away at the end of this Yarnchix News episode to one of you, one of the 26 who asked the questions. I will use random numbers and I will find a winner. I really loved all the questions and the conversations that I feel we might be having afterwards. I really hope you enjoy this kind of content. I just felt like doing it for 2023 as a little kind of get going in a new year with a new format way. Oops, sorry. My name is Mimi. I podcast from Berlin Wedding. That's why I have an Instagram account called Liebwed, which is abbreviated of the words Liebes and wedding. So dear wedding, my neighborhood and home. And yeah, I started off on Instagram trying to do like poetic, photographic love letters to my neighborhood. Also in connection to the different scenery that this place holds. There's like green, but there's also lots of street, and we do live on a busy street, so there's a lot of like urban but living spaces, and yeah, it's super cool, and yeah, I really like it here. It's very multicultural and there's so much to learn and see, and it's a nice corner of town. I'm having a cuppa English breakfast tea and my favorite lemonade, banana mate. I've just chucked it down. I'm like almost finished that bottle. So let's get going. I haven't got any simple knitting. I've got crochet where I would be like kind of looking down on my hands most of the time, and I've got balaclava on the needles where I'm currently doing an intarsia circle, so I cannot knit and chat. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's just good to have a Q&A. And then Yarnchix News episodes in general, I also share all the things that are coming to my Patreon page, which has different tiers, so different things happen for the different tiers. I'm super excited that I have just sent out the Zenist rewards as well as the Yarnchix letter. Circumstances meant that it's also the reason why I'm recording this late. It's the 3rd of April and I was meant to record this in March, but here I am recording now, so phew, I feel better. My chest infection is gone and my tooth has been mended, so I'm excited that mail went out. So analog letterbox stuff for those subscribers who subscribe to some Yarnchix letters, and the Zenist where I send out zines or other Yarnchix goods. So if I was to launch a new badge or pin or some things, I will send them to my kind of testing Zenist crew, so I'm excited. You will have mail very soon. I've written a little post about my garden for the blog, and I just shared the March vlog over on Patreon. This month will be a bit quieter in the beginning, but we will definitely have our online knit night at the end of the month, and a digital postcard coming to the blog, and a travel vlog, I suppose, because we're off on holiday tomorrow, and hence I'm recording this Q&A just on time. I'm gonna try and do it in one roll. 26 questions, 26 answers. Let's go. Okay, Ruxandra asked, about Mimi as a young adult. What did you study? What were your aspirations? And how do you compare yourself from now, I guess, like to that younger me? I studied in Brighton, and I studied visual arts and theatre, so performance art, a creative degree, and I really had a great time. It was a big thing for me to leave Germany. I'm originally from near Frankfurt am Main, so south from Berlin, and I had moved to Berlin prior to applying for universities, because I wanted to live with my friends who were all here and who are all still here or back again to Berlin. So I wanted to live with them, and I lived and worked and saved some money in order to be able to afford the first year of university in the UK. And then when I got my course, I was super surprised, but I also had to leave Berlin behind and knew there was some things. I wasn't finished. The city hadn't finished with me, but I kind of left and lived in Brighton. And I always dreamt to be on the stage, to like do to do theatre. I mean, maybe not necessarily a real stage, because when I graduated I did a lot of street theatre, and I had so much fun because it was very interactive. It was very close to your audience, and we had a fantastic 3-4 years of touring, and in 2003 I moved back to Berlin, and I even managed to carry on touring with my Brighton-based company. That was lovely. It was a fun time. It was when Ryanair and EasyJet and, oops, I shouldn't be mentioning those. It was when some flight companies had very cheap flights, and it was easy to commute. It was just me. I could go on a Thursday and come back on a Tuesday at ridiculous o'clock. It didn't matter. And then it was me and family, and it became more difficult. I carried on working until my second child was born, I think, in the company. I'm still the same. I still like being creative and having adventures, and I'm quite like extrovert, so the whole kind of being creative and being on stage and working with a company, like a group of humans, is still kind of what I feel where I'm at. So I do feel I'm the same person still, a little bit older, 3 children later, and now I'm also with 2 kittens. And I had a dog, and then I now don't have a dog. So I've gone through a lot since being that young person, and I'm sober now, which I would recommend to my younger self. So Puck asked, if you would have to go to an island and there was only one type of yarn you could take, what would you pick? And Puck added that all the colors would be provided, so it'd be just one type of yarn and you'd have it. That's very, very, that's a difficult question, because I feel 2 ways about it, but I think I'm gonna go with my answer A. Well, because there can be hot and there can be cold islands, and I'm just about to escape to a very cold island. It's very rainy in England, so but I still think my hot island choice would be the best thing to take. So it'd be Lino Muka, the linen yarn that I ran the linen yarn knit along Lino Muka Cal 4, which started this weekend, and I love all the colours, so to have all of them there would be fine. I also think, because I love building and I like experimenting, and we would need nets for catching fish, and we would need, there's so many things. I could easily crochet as hammocks to sleep in. So if this island was hot or cold, actually for survival reasons, Lino Muka would be the best yarn to bring along. And yeah, so that's my answer, Puck. Maybe you knew. Maybe you did. But if it was really cold, I think I would want like a Shetland yarn. So this is not for me, it's a machine knit Shetland yarn all over colorwork cardigan, which I'm gonna live in for a week now because I'm taking this to the island because it's gonna keep me warm. It's got this kind of, you know, textured on the inside for the color work. It's very insulating. It keeps me warm and toasty. So I think on a cold island, wool like this would actually be very beneficial. But I'm sticking with my answer A. So then Marta asked, who taught you to knit, Mimi? Who inspired you to lead this creative, knitting, colourful life you live? My Oma, so my grandma, she taught me how to knit when I was very young, and I knitted for my teddy bears. I used to have a collection of these kind of cuddly toys, and I used to knit really small things. And my mum taught me to crochet. My mum's very much a crocheter. She also dabbled in macrame. That's why I started making this macrame to recreate an advent calendar my mama had made when I was a kid that looked like an owl, and I'm still dreaming to achieve that one day. And both these women in my life are very colorful, and yeah, they've always liked fashion and making things with their hands. I've inherited lots of garments also from my grandma that I really, really love. And yeah, it was a really good thing to learn. But I know that I've changed it up a bit. So I think the people who've inspired me to live this creative life that are not immediate family are all my friends who work in the arts, and everybody's just kind of making do and thrifting and mending and creating with such sense of self and kind of finding fulfillment in this craft, and that inspires me to keep going and do my own thing. Because, for example, my grandma, she used to knit only socks when she got older, and I think she stopped knitting and then gave me all the yarn, and it was all very dramatic, and it's a bit of a shame because I prefer if she knit, because I think knitting really helps people's ease in life, and it gives you happiness to have a project on the go. But my mama, she still crochets. Mama crochets a lot, and she has a business selling crochet hats for, like, yeah, she does markets and things like that. And so I'm excited to see what she's working on. She knitted me some socks for Christmas, and she said it was almost like you know, reverse silly because I knit so much, and I knitted her the twist and turns shawl. But it's nice that we're swapping makes like this now. Okay, next question. Milena asks, have you thought about making yourself a dress, or have you made a dress for yourself before? And I guess Milena means knitting, and I have not knitted myself a dress. I did recently in our Liebeswedding, our local knit night, see a dress on someone's needles, which I really like. So I might follow Antonio's progress and see how it goes, and then I might knit myself a dress one day. I've never really thought about it, but I've always admired people who did knit their dresses, so I do want to sew myself some dresses though. And that's a little side note, I've got loads of patterns at the ready and some linen yarn, linen fabrics from work. And yeah, I kind of promised myself for my birthday this year, which was 6 weeks ago, that I would sew early in the year so that I have the linen garments for summer to wear. Fingers crossed. So sewn dresses first before I would be knitting dresses? It's a good question, because a knitted dress is commitment, but then why not? Sondra also asked a question. Sondra asked, where do you find inspiration aside from other knitters, menders, or other makers? I think that's a really good question. Inspiration is like everywhere. Sometimes it's like color pops in that I see out and about that will make me want to kind of make something with those colors together. I watch a lot of films and I watch a lot of series. Some of the things I see sometimes in films, I'm like, oh, I wish I'd have that. And sometimes I do research, and sometimes I know other people have already kind of Ravelry created some patterns in that way. So that I find really inspiring. And I find it, I'm quite a kind of street, like looking around, seeing people in Berlin, some kind of streetwear styles, or yeah, I find that extremely inspiring, as it's like super inspiring also to work in a shop and have all these creatives, like people who make things for themselves regularly, like pop in. So inspiring. So I know that would include other makers and crafters and menders, but admittingly they're like the main group. Then sometimes I like reading books and thinking of like what that is. So maybe stories, because that is like a big group of a big what do you say, like a big, that would be a way to answer this. That will be more general, like films, series, books. And there's like some Berlin bloggers, and like, do you remember like Flickr days? Like there's sometimes you can really find things like that back via Pinterest or something, but there's so many kind of loops you can go down, and yeah, it's hard working in a yarn store and not constantly feeling inspired from that environment, I tell you that. GDK4066, I do not know your name, but there's a cool question coming up. How long have you lived in Germany, and what drove you to move to Berlin? So that's an interesting question, because maybe some people aren't aware that I am actually German. So I live in my home country, so I've lived here. Well, I lived here until I moved away when I was 19, and then I came back in 2003. And a bit like going back to the beginning of this episode, I hadn't finished in Berlin. I'd lived here for 9 months after finishing school and traveling. I moved in with 3 of my friends, and I lived and worked here, and they all went to university here, and I'd gone through the process of applying in the UK, so I was just kind of waiting for what kind of move I would make. And I really feel like it was a hard time, or it was also an exciting time, but it was difficult because it was rainy, grey, winter Berlin, which is a tough time to move here, is like grey winters, I promise you. But I definitely, that was the first thought I had when I finished university. And I even tried to get a placement here, because we had like a 2-month placement in second year, and didn't manage. I wanted to be with Gob Squad, who I wrote something about in Yarnchix zine, but they didn't have work at the time, so it didn't work out, which was a shame. Another kind of live art company that is still running. And actually, I think one of them came and bought yarn in the shop. I was a bit fangirly. And yeah, I hadn't finished with Berlin, or Berlin hadn't finished with me. I really like the culture, the vibe, the general openness of the city, because compared to London, for example, we have massive sidewalks, we've got trees in the streets, and it's pretty shady. Where we live, we have green areas all around, especially like my cycle route to work, for example. It takes me along a flowing piece of water. It's not really a river, it's a very smelly stream, but it's very green, and you know, it's kind of a nice commute to go like that. And there is all these hidden gems the city holds. And you know, I do like exhibitions, I do like going to gigs and going out at night and dancing, and Berlin has all those things. And it also has the opportunity to go to the lakes that are like literally, some are in the city, and then, you know, from half an hour to an hour travel time, you know, we have the Bauwagen, that's like an hour and 10 minutes travel time. It's amazing. Wild nature, forests and lakes just outside the city. It's so good. Xenia asked, how did you start your knitting journey? I might have answered that a little bit with the teddy bear garments, and I recently actually went home and looked for the teddy bear and this vest that I made, but I thought I'd mention this one teddy bear vest as I've just finished knitting a teddy bear t-shirt. I was thinking of this a lot. So Xenia, you hit a mark with this question. I knitted using like 8mm needles, and my grandma gave me this cream colored chenille, which is like ropey, you know, it's like ropey but silky. And I knitted this really open gauge see-through thing and I made, because it was almost like all over buttonholes, I added a purple button to the front and maybe a wooden button. I think it was 2 different colored buttons at the front. And my favorite teddy bear, which my sister had one and I had one. We were always given teddy bears, mostly at the same time. We were 2 years apart, so you know, it was like that. We'd get the same thing in different colors or something. And hers was completely flat, and we still have it. I think it's still in my mum's cellar, but mine was all fluffy because I used to just kind of display it with the clothes on it. I wasn't like flattening it in my sleep, but yeah, I think that vest still exists. So one day I might find it and might pop up here, but that is how I started with teddy bear garments. Anke also asked a question. How do you plan your colours for projects like your penguono? I showed that in the last episode. I'm gonna just link it again here near my stop woos photograph. That's difficult. That one I just started with the back, and I knew I wanted to use this very rainbowy but subtly terracotta-y yarn that was in my stash called Tante Emma's Schleuder. It was one of my favorite skeins I ever had, and I wanted to use that. And with that project, with this penguino that I then turned into a penguono, I talk about that a lot in the last podcast, I wanted to use a lot of Berua or unspun or only slightly spun yarns. So in German we say Dochtgarn, because I wanted the whole thing to be very light. I have a penguono where I've mauled basically. I use fingering weight, lots of sock yarns with 3 strands, and it's lovely, but it's very heavy. And I wanted to have a lighter version of that garment, even when I set out for it to be a kid's garment. And so it started with this kind of pastel-y rainbow, but this terracotta pink on the back, and then just made the welts and added some neon and some grays. And then the whole thing turned, and I was like, I'm not making this for a child, I'm keeping that for myself. And I stuck to the yarns. The Bayroa is the main yarn in that penguono, and I just used what I had, so I didn't buy anything new for it. I carried on knitting on it for the Von Herzenskraft and Fiber Mystery Knit Along 22, so it was like a craft where we were all just using stashes. It didn't matter if we crocheted or if we knitted, and I finished it this year, so I'm I was I didn't finish in December, but I finished in January. Oh. And then I was all like into these greens and neons and pinks and pops of color. So this is how that one happened. And the one I mentioned before, I actually set out to have a strawberry minty. I called that penguono strawberry minty, and that was kind of the color code I gave myself. And I had lots of fun doing that, like following a specific color idea and doing a 2-color eye code that looks like strawberry sorbet and like mint syrup. So yeah, sometimes it's like foodie things. I think about food a lot in my life. Sorry, I'm gonna, because I just went weird. We'll see if you just saw some penguono just to get over my own weirdness. Next up is Geraldine's question. What are your all-time favorite makes? How do you approach a big project like the penguono? So, my all-time favorite makes. Very difficult at the moment, because I'm always like most in love with what I've recently finished, and at the moment, you know, I'm in a balaclava frenzy. So at the moment, this kind of, if it was like makes, if it was a collection of, probably I should also say that I really like the penguono group. I made a small one when Stephen West hadn't yet published a penguino pattern. I kind of shrunk the penguono to fit my girl, who was 4 at the time, and I really loved that. I loved learning about gauge, about my own kind of way of changing things, about going into the maths of things, being a bit geeky. I love that. So maybe that would be something I should mention. And then third in this all-time favorite makes, I don't know, it's like a non-hierarchical group of makes that I like. I really love my shawls, like I really love the shawls I knitted. And I think I have to say my favorite shawl must be one of Stephen West's. I think at the moment I would say Shawlography. I recently posted a lot about that on Instagram because I had this kind of flirt going, oh, the colors are so good, and my child helped me with those colors. So there's reasons I love Stephen West for shawl knitting. And the Rockhopper shawl and Anna Maud's pattern was the first and biggest thing I ever knitted. First shawl, triangle shawl, and biggest thing. I recently found that it has holes. I wonder if the moths got in, because it's like 100% mohair, so I need to mend that, because that's terrible. It's just because I've kept it out and the kitten's like sleeping on it and stuff. It might have gotten munched because it's in a dark corner. Berlin is very dangerous for moths. I keep my whole stash, everything in bags, like all the minis for stash and everything has to be in bags. But with the knitting, it's very like, no, it's at risk. Berlin is a busy city full of moths. How do I approach a project like that? Yeah, like before, maybe, as I said, I start a project and then maybe I dwindle and then I go back to it and I have a great time. That's how it was with the penguono. I think that was like, I just left it for a year. Made the back of the penguono, left it 1.5 years, then worked on it for 3 months and finished it. So sometimes I give myself the grace to put big projects aside. I do swatch. I'm a bit of a swatcher. I like swatching to try things out, and it's worthwhile. But sometimes that also shows me that I might not particularly enjoy a certain pattern. So there's this lace sweater I really want to make, Atlantica I think it's called. I'm gonna research that. It's like in the pom-pom, it's a lace where you hold Einband double, and I didn't have gauge, so I need to make another swatch, and it was really brainy. I know Louisa knitted that and I really enjoyed, like I saw hers, I really love it. But yeah, I should be more brave with techniques and things, but maybe it doesn't help to be too planny about it, like too swatchy, but I try and like stay open to for it to rest a couple of months. Non-committal cast on kind of commitment to big projects. Buddha Knit asked, how do you plan for bringing colours together to create a whole vision? Well, sometimes I make drawings and that's super fun. So I make little drawings on paper, and I did this like several times for several projects in the past that I made. I didn't use Procreate at the time. I'd make all these blanks of the same pattern and just use watercolors, and you know, as we were drawing anyway with the kids, and I was just use the watercolors to check what kind of colors I'd fancy, and I had all of those. I think in the old podcast you might see some of those watercolors, and I had so much fun. I did this also for the penguono, the kids one that I made, and it even helped me when I was stuck with the penguino. I just kind of started just using watercolors on this kind of blank drawing. I've now started using Procreate, which is really easy, and you can kind of pick colors from art. This is how I made the swatch story of the last podcast. I kind of used the pen to pick colors out of this photograph, and now I'm a little bit stuck because it's a little bit too set. I now want exactly those colors, and if I don't have the time to really stash dive and I can't find it quickly, I will not carry on this log cabin sweater cowl. It kind of also blocks me in ways sometimes to be like that, but it helps me to visualize what I want to do, and it also helps me to visualize what I might not want to do. So Karina asked, what are your knitting plans for Linu Mukakal? Thank you, Karina, for asking this. I'm gonna get the bear because I mentioned it before, and then I can. Here it is. This is Myrtil Bear. I call my Joao knit, so that's a Rosa Pomar yarn, Myrtil Bear Myrtilo, and I put him in the swatch. This is my swatch for the Taroti this year in Linu Muka Knit Along. I plan to knit with 2 threads in this color. It's called Plum. It's one of the new colorways. the towelty. At first I thought I might marl it with black here, like in the sleeve. Or I wanted to try out to marl it with marine blue. Then I thought maybe I need a black t-shirt, but this I really didn't enjoy. It didn't see my stitches at all. My eyes were like, I can't see. So yeah, and then in the sleeves I marled plum with black, but I think I'm gonna just go all plum. The pattern is the Tawati by Kiyomi Burgeon, and I'm super excited. We have a giveaway running until tonight for the launch of Lino Muka Knit Along, so you might as well just hop on, because I think I'm gonna try and upload this right away. Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm also dreaming of knitting, or not knitting, crocheting the Weifan tee from the latest Pom Pom magazine, issue number 44. Plus, I've started crocheting the over something bag. They have an overlay and an overlap pattern there. It's I think it's called the overlap bag. And I'm excited to crochet. So that's my plan, Karina. And we're halfway with my question Q&A, so I hope you are still okay for me to carry on with the last of the light. Let me try and get a little bit more daylight. I'm excited. Lino Muka Knit Along is great. It's so much fun, and I love having Lino Muka t-shirts in summer. There'll be so much good wear out of this very simple linen t-shirt. That's I think it's a good choice of patterns, also size inclusive, so check it out. Kyombi is the Instagram account. Hannah asked, where do you get color inspiration from, and how do you choose which colors you will knit with next? I really love having a story for my knitting, like with the Sun Gazer in last year's Lino Muka Knit Along. I did also do like a watercoloring in, and I decided I wanted to do a sun and a moon side, so kind of more cool and a more warmer color scheme. And yeah, I had so much fun giving myself this story in my mind, and I just drew this. You know, I had the linen lying next to me, or I'd already looked at it at work, and I really knew I wanted to do this very pink center, which is fuchsia, and the color red. And now I have all these leftovers, so I will surely make a leftover pattern. Maybe this time it's going to be a bit muddier, like leftovers from the bag as well, like the maroon color I'm crocheting with right now. I'm super excited to use for a leftover project as well. So I like having these kind of images from nature. I'm thinking about a pond. I don't know why. Maybe because my sister-in-law's got a cool pond. Maybe that's going to be the story. But yeah, I like having that. And yeah, I often choose kind of spontaneously what color to knit with. Like in case of the Lino Muka with the plum, it was just one of the new colors and I just really liked it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do that. And then I started swatching and marling, and I'm like, no, I really like it just by itself. So yeah, thank you for your question. Anna-Laura asked, what are your hacks on living with 5 people together in a flat where you also need creative space and space for yourself? And yeah, that is a very interesting question, because we do try to manage. We don't necessarily always manage. I think it helped having the Baovang to have this escape, partly also to have that when everything gets a bit too much, that one of us can go, because the kids don't really enjoy going there at the moment, to be honest. So it'll be more me who'd go. I really need to go. Like last time I went with a friend and her kids, and we had so much fun making fire and just hanging out, and doing all those things that you do out there, which like go for a walk along the lake. There's always some gardening or some mission to do because it's in a community and there's always work to be done. And yeah, I was still recovering from my bronchitis, so I was just chilling, fire making. I was the fire tender and the childminder, and I baked and kind of do that. In our home space we have got like different corners and escapes, so we build a mezzanine so we can sleep on and we can kind of hide away from that. Our kids all have their own screens and their own spaces, but we will try and divide a room, because we've got a really big room that needs dividing. So I don't know if that really is a hack. I think that's a hack. High beds is a hack, especially in Berlin with the tall ceilings. It works out. The luxury and utmost privilege to have an escape we can go to summer or winter, because the Bauwagen has a fireplace. That's a hack, but it's kind of a financial. I know that not everybody can do that, but we were lucky enough to inherit, so we did that with some inheritance. And yeah, well, my main way to be creative is to do it in the afternoon and then like tidy up. So I have lots of boxes where I've got like half tidied up like zine projects and stuff in it. So okay, it's getting dark. I need to this is my other hack. Like, I'm sat in the kitchen and they've got the living room for Xbox use, and like hiding away in this corner in the kitchen and the light is dwindling. So I'm gonna just plan with answers for questions, but I think lots of boxes where you can hide your things, like IKEA Trofast. Sorry for mentioning another company, they're great. I just put things in. I've got these like simple lids and it's all right next to the dinner table, which is where I work when I zine make, and I've got all this like paper mache stuff there, all my paper clippings, like mending projects, like all those are in those like pots, and I just like grab them, take the lid off, spill it all out, and yeah, we try. Okay, we're getting there with the last bit of light, the last. Oh no, we're not. We're like, I've got some more to go. Get yourselves a drink. Kelly, from where you are now and looking back to younger Mimi, if you could offer one thing to her, what would you say? It's like a good question. I was thinking about that earlier on already, and I would suggest to give herself room to play, like look at herself with less self-judging, self-scrutiny, and to give more space for play and adventure, like to be less serious, I guess. I would suggest sobriety, because now that I'm committed to it, I feel really good. It's definitely one thing that I have less worries since I'm sober, so I think I would suggest that to her as a younger person. Definitely let her understand that, it's not easy to grow up for anyone, and not to judge on like her own kind of ways of dealing with it. It's a very strong question. I hope I've answered you, Kelly. Miss L. Wise asks, how do you choose which project to work in? As I guess you have several on the go, what makes you jump into a project? Often it's my friends. If some of my friends at work, especially if Nora from Kidscan says, I'm making the cozy raglan, and I'm like, oh god, I've got yarn for the cozy classic light, I should be knitting that with you. Or if somebody buys some Pruska, I'm like, oh god, I've got Pruska in my stash, I want to knit my Bruska cardigan, and then I get inspired to jump into that project. I've recently swatched for both, and I think the only thing that's holding me back from knitting the Cozy Classic Light is the cast on. I just haven't cast it on. I should just jump in and do that because it's great. It will be a great staple. Lisa asked, as you often have a few on the go, what is your preference for what you take out with you to knit in public? And are there some projects you prefer to knit at home? Definitely. Like, I often take things like my smaller projects out and about with me. At the moment, I take the crochet project out because it's like granny square crochet project. So it's so great. It's just a small bag. It's like this tiny little bag. And it's so transportable, so I crochet on that, and then I knit the balaclava with intarsia at home because that's so complex, but I like having complex knitting projects. I like it being a bit demanding when I'm at home because it makes my brain stop thinking all the thoughts. I like being challenged. Yeah, so I definitely have home patterns. As soon as they get big, like the penguono, they also stay at home. But the penguono was an out and about knit project until it became 3D, because there's quite a lot of it in flat, like a shawl. I definitely take my shawls project wherever I go, whatever size they are, because I guess like the 3D knitting thing, or sleeves, or I don't know. As soon as it gets 3D, it's something I do at home. Like the bear, for example, I would have knitted only at home. Too many short rows. I love them, but too many to do out and about, because then you forget where you're at. Chiavan asked, was community in whichever shape or form always an important part of your life? Did that change over the course of your life? I think it always was. It always was important to me. Like, my friends were always really important to me. Feeling like I knew where my family was at was really important to me. I was always looking after my little sister, and I would really like to look after her right now. But I can't. I'm too far away from her. But I have always invested into community. Like, when I was at school, I was always looking after the Klassensprecherin, you know, over the books and the social things. I was always making sure my friends were okay. I grew up in an interesting environment, but kind of managed to get through without being like in any particular group, which I realize now. I have like a handful of friends that I'm close to from school years, but university is where I found my community with my artist friends, my creatives. Like, my best buddy there is Mimi, who, it's hilarious, but we're Mimi and Mimi. And if I hadn't met her, like, I don't know where I'd be, because it was like, at first I was like, oh no, another Mimi in my year. And then she walks up to me and goes, Mimi, and I was like, yes, forever in love. And I didn't have to worry at all about sharing the name with a friend, because they were amazing. And so I've met lots of people, and through doing theatre and being in company and being in a community with Bauwang, I have all these groups of people, and all this community kind of keeps me going and keeps my brain going, because I know, for example, in the garden, we need to be invested in caring for one another to make the whole project carry on. And yeah, and I like our knit night. I like Liebeswedding Strick. It's a cool community, for example, and yeah, it's worth my mind space to care there, I think. Joa asked, what is your top 3 for a cozy home? A fire, a high bed, a raised bed, and a kettle, because you need tea. Cheers to fires, kettles, and raised beds. Because in Berlin, I don't know if you know, but most homes here, we cook with fire. So I have a fire when I cook, but but I do not have a fireplace yet, but I have that in my cozy bauwagen. So top 3. Mariana asked, what are your zine making plans for 2023? And please share the recipe for the apple and pear spread. I'll share that at the very end, so that you can just copy it or something. So thank you for reminding me that I was meant to share that with you ages ago. And my zine making plans are, I've just finished a mini zine, which I will send to you because you sent me mail, which I still haven't opened. I'll open that tonight. It'll be my treat after this, before editing. Ha! And I could do an unboxing. Yeah, so I'm making mini zines for the Patreon, and they're really tiny, and I've just made a project zine all about the Fest. So I want to keep doing those because they're very creative and make me feel free. And the Yarnchix zine will have 3 issues. Pardon me. Number 13 is going to come out when I come back from holiday, because there's no way I was going to push through. First I was sick, then I had all the worries with my teeth. Now we're going on holiday. So yeah, so there's 13, 14 and 15 coming out this year. Zine 13 is themed around self-care, so it's called For You. And Zine 14 will be about community. I would really love people to send me stuff. It'll be like more of an editing thing. I will obviously add a lot of mending stuff in there, and I'll do some of my own columns, but I'd really love to have like more input from the outside. So that is a bit of my plan for 2023. I don't know how to do this thing because I want to stay open, so I don't want it to be like send it in and then I'll publish it. I want you guys to get some, you know, if it's communities, like how do we share what I earn with it, which, you know, it kind of pays for itself, but how can I pay for contributions, especially when there are art and writing and stuff like this. So we'll see. That's like a work in progress to have contributions. Malupopalu. I love that name. I had to say it twice. What has been the hardest knitting project for you? Good question. The hardest knitting project I knitted so far, I think, was a color work. I think Tresta was very hard for me. Is it Tresta? Yeah, because it was the first time I knitted a colorwork sweater, and I made the colorwork really tight. So I didn't think about the fact that I'm quite a tight knitter, and in colorwork I was knitting even tighter. So I should have knitted the colorwork in a 4.5, but instead I knitted everything in a 4 millimeter, and I then amended it, but I struggled through my second colorwork project, which was the, oh god, it's in the stripes making zine, the one with the Zollbein cardigan. I used a 5.5 for the colorwork and a 5 for the sweater. The sleeves were way too tight. I knitted, I think, 5 sleeves for the thing. Well, it has 2 sleeves, but I had to re-knit several times, so that was pretty hard. Yeah, it takes a lot of practice for me to knit color work. Josie asked, does working in a yarn store add to your knitting inspirations, like the creativity of it, or does it drain your creative energy? That's a really good question again. It mainly adds. Oh, the light is dwindling and the... Okay, matte boost. It's the later. It is super giving me creativity. It makes me happy. Like, I think energy-wise, I'm often drained. Like, it's not necessarily that I don't feel creative, but I feel very tired and I get cold and I need to wear like super thick socks in the evenings when I get home or have a long bath. In winter, when there's so many conversations, there's so much stuff going on, I'm so inspired. Like, I'm just on drained energy, but not drained creativity. That stays. I often want to knit what everyone's coming to shop for. I also want to make, so Laura asked, oh, I really love the swatch story from the poppy photo of you and or your sun and moon sun gazer. Do you often start in this way? Yeah, and I think I have fun starting in that way, like having a story before I start the project really helps me. And yeah, I wonder what's going to be like that next. For example, I want to cast on the Zero Brothel cardigan, a design by Fran, and I really want to knit that, and I kind of just like the wool in that, but it's very earthy, and I think sometimes energies like that, it really helps me to pull that into my life. So earthy will be like a rooting energy, and so I think I should cast that on because I need a bit more rest and roots. So yeah, I do start. And then Laura also asked, how's your patchwork quilt coming along? Not much. I've started like little corners. Like I've got like a square, and then I thought, oh, I should make that into a cushion first. So I've made a cat. Okay. Oh, well, the cat just jumped up and then fell, so I had to stop briefly. I think she didn't see the camera and then got scared by it and she jumped up. But yeah, I haven't gone much further than starting on different squares and then deciding I'll make them into pillows because they're too wonky. So I should get going in it. So thank you, Laura, for the reminder. Ursula asked, how do you manage your mending mountain? Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's just about getting going and keeping on going. Like at the moment I'm writing these lists, and that really helps me. So I write lists, so I write down what needs mending and why and how I would prefer to start. So I'm helping myself with my zine making because that's something I'm putting into zine number 13 is this. So kind of ongoing and documenting what needs mending and why, and then getting inspired by writing about it, and then hopefully setting out to do it. So I hope that is helpful. I think it's okay. Last three questions coming up. Sorry, I don't know, the batteries are running out or something, so the camera's starting to play up. There's some specific knitting techniques you're eager to try. That is a question from Data Best Benzene. Are there other crafts you would like to try out? So I really want to try out more brioche knitting, and I really want to be exploring my crochet skill. I know I'm not very advanced, but I definitely know I can improve there. So I'm excited about crochet, and I definitely also really want to try brioche. So there's always crafts that I want to try out. The next thing should really be spinning. It's a big one. Judith asked what my goals are for 2023, both considering knitting and otherwise. So I thought, because it mixes well with the very last question, which is by Lika, is that I will ask my tarot cards again something, so that we have a tarot card oracle at the end of the Q&A. I think my plans are very much to just keep finding inspiration and stumbling into my knitting as I'm doing. I definitely want to finish the Tao Tea this summer, and not go too fast. I knitted so many Linumuka projects last year. I do not want to knit that many or more. I do want to mend knitting projects that I feel are not perfect, or that have like a hole, or that need something's changing, like a sleeve shortening or lengthening. I want to be more focused on making the things that I already have wearable. And for myself, yeah, with the podcast and my zine making with my kind of creative thing, I would really love to grow. I would like to have more independency to maybe make art. So a big dream was to get a space where I can actually bring all my art material and be out and have that and be more focused and grow my podcast, as in have more podcast episodes more regularly, or other vlogs like the like themed vlogs that I've started with the balaclava. There will be definitely a summer knitting, Linumuka themed extra vlog and things like this. And yeah, it would help me to have support for that. So if you can consider supporting me on Patreon, that'd be lovely. There's a vlog tier there, so I make extra content. It's only like one thing a month. I can't do much more because of time management. I would love to earn my money with this kind of entertainment thing, but that is bigger than what I can achieve in this year. But a coffee here and there, you know, shout out to your friends for them to find my podcast. Things like that would help me with that dream, because it's like a step-by-step, person-by-person thing. And I love our community events, and I think our podcast crew, like the people who watch it and chat about what they're doing and who come to the online knit nights, are like actually super inspiring people. So I'm glad to have that crew. And yeah, last question, and I will kind of go into the answering. Maybe the cards will help me answer for goals for knitting and otherwise 2023. Lika asked me what my favorite tarot deck is and why. And I think I can't find my favorite one because it's at the Balvang. But I brought two of my decks. So this is the Mother piece, and this is the Pagan Cats. And this currently is my favorite, and I will claim as my favorite for now for this episode. I'm going to use the Great Arcana of this because it's cats. It's got cats. I love cats. Just look. Look. It's just cats. I love cats. And the woven one I have from Natalie Novak, I really love. Natalie Novak is Combed Thunder on Instagram, and that's her project, and she weaves artwork, and she made a tarot deck of the Great Arcana. So only 22 cards, and I really love it, and it's kind of the size that's manageable for my tarot knit oracle here. So I'm going to use the Pagan Cats tarot deck now and fade out with a little bit of zine making and a little bit of tarot oracle. Sorry, my camera doesn't want to do this anymore. I tried to say the Tarot Net Oracle then, but the camera cut out again. So I also remembered I wanted to say goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm gonna draw a winner out of the Q&As who will win